Welcome to the Journey with Jen Snow. I'm Jen Snow. I'm your clinical hypnotherapist. I'm your Reiki Master, your inner journey coach. I am here because I want to talk about Monday's meditation. But first off, hello everyone. Hey Alex. Hey Diane. Hey Purple Princess. Hey everybody on TikTok. If you want to join us, come over to Soul Journey with Jen Snow, where I can answer questions about Monday's meditation. And we're going to talk about some tools and tricks, and I'm going to share a piece of my own self-healing journey. Now, as I get into this conversation, at no point am I directing you to make any medical decisions against your doctor's advice and your therapist's advice and your team. So this is something that this is a journey that my path took me on, but that doesn't mean it's everybody's path. But I think learning how to do some of the things that I did for myself can help be a complementary part of your journey if it resonates with you. And when I say if it resonates with you, that's a big thing, guys, because when we go through our experience, when we go through life, we have peaks, we have moments of greatness, we have moments of sadness and hurt and frustration, pretty much the gamut, right? And that gamut of experiences can really shift how we do things or how we do things, how talks are. Oh, nice. Sorry, guys. How we move through the world and how our physical body responds, how our emotional, mental, and energetic body responds to our experiences and the emotions that we hold within us from those experiences and how they get compounded through life. And our subconscious mind is the creator of that memory bank of connections, that memory bank of experiences from this timeline to any other timeline. Basically, your soul's history is sitting in the access to it is through your subconscious mind, through, meditation, hypnosis, trance, and other beautiful ways of getting there. So why I wanted to start doing these extra week, touching base on the topics of Mondays, because as you guys know, for those of you who have seen the show, we kind of do a little coaching in the beginning and then we get into meditation. And I've been sitting with this for a long time on answering questions about the tools and the meditations, because I know that we do them and sometimes I get ahead of myself. I totally fully admit it. I can get going and not having somebody just say, hey, back up. Can you re-explain this? Or can you dive into that a little bit deeper? I have to be that guy when you're on your own and you're like, oh, wait a minute. I have to be my own self-coach here. So I want to talk about connecting with your inner voice and connecting with your inner self and ask questions. But first, I'm going to talk about why I believe that is super important. So it is my belief that it is wonderfully important to really get a good, it doesn't have to be clear because the answers don't always come right away. I know that we live in a world where instant gratification is super, super now. But I've been taught on my journey that not every answer comes up, even though I've asked the question, and learning to sit with it and let it go and have a trust. And for some of us, we call that faith, that those answers and those synchronicities will show up in our lives when we most need them. And I just realized that I've got pellet stove ash on my hand. Apparently the soap did not get there. So yeah, there we go. Welcome to my world. It was cold, so I turned on the pellet stove. U-turn. And sometimes those answers will come weeks, days, months. And my journey was interesting because I had to learn that patience, that faith, that trust, that pause when I really didn't want to. So when I fell into hypnosis and became a clinical hypnotherapist, all of you know that I was clinically blind and I was struggling with kidney failure. And I was, following my gut on getting into school, getting into that place, and didn't know why at the time. But on day 2 of my school, my kidney specialist called me and said, hey, you've your kidney function has dropped so much that we really need to, you're now in failure. Like, we need to talk about dialysis and the next steps to get on the transplant list. And I'll be fully honest, I wasn't prepared for that conversation, and I didn't have time for it because I started taking this course and I was committed and invested into figuring out how to finish this course with the obstacles that had come up in my life. What I've never shared with anybody is that finishing that course wasn't just about becoming a clinical hypnotherapist for me. It was about proving to myself that this disability that had come on in my life wasn't going to prevent me from figuring out how to create a better life for myself. So there's a lot riding on that. It was my second really big challenge that I had faced once I overcame the initial crisis mode. The first one was, which I did, was riding my horse and inventing my horse blind. That was kind of my, can I push this envelope so far that the other side, I will make it to the other side. So inventing my horse was this challenge because, in inventing, we are jumping obstacles that don't fall down. We are in open fields. We are in dressage rings where you have to do a ballet pattern with your horse. We are in stadium jumping where those jumps do fall down, but they're very technical, tight, faster courses. And so, in the 3-day event, over the 3 days of the event, all of those phases come into play. And, getting to one jump I had mastered, but being able to put all these patterns into play, that was my biggest obstacle. Getting lost wasn't really a worry of mine, because if I got lost, really, it was the blind girl getting lost, and that's okay. That wasn't what it meant to me, but it was the completion of it. And completing that, I was proving to myself that even though people think things are possible, that perhaps maybe, following this quote that I got years before everything happened, was that the impossible is just one action away from being possible. And I've kind of held that. It's on my board, and that quote has stayed with me my entire life. Well, not my entire life, but a good portion of it, if not more than half my life. And that's always kind of been there. And I didn't know why that quote came to me. I heard it in my inner voice and just kind of sat with it and left it and let it be, and kind of reminded myself of that when I went through tough times. So going to hypnotherapy school was, I didn't know why I was there, but it became a challenge to myself. Was, could I figure out how to re-educate and redefine what I could do in my life, even though I was, not newly blind, but blindness was new in my life. And I wasn't upset about it. It wasn't something that I hated after I got over my initial shock and crisis mode. I got to see the world very differently, and it definitely forced a lot of my intuitive gifts it forced me to allow myself to trust and have faith in them. So there was a lot of purpose to it. And when I went into that kidney failure and I thought, could this help me? Could it improve something? And it, as you guys know, it did. And it wasn't a quick, improvement done, we're good. No, this was a journey, and things had to keep going. And what I learned in that class, not only were the tools to help other people create their own unlocking of their potential and unlocking things that were holding them back, but I learned to really connect with my inner voice. I really learned the power of sitting with my intuitive voice, my higher self voice. And that has helped me, has helped me beyond words. And I know I can't give it enough emphasis to take the next step or follow a path on the journey and see where that leads me. Not all paths got me where I wanted to be or got me the results that I expected. And that was another lesson, was letting go of the time frame and the expectation, but to see and observe and go through the journey and and stay in the process. So when we talk about systems and we talk about process, that is another very important point too when you are creating this path of self-discovery, awakening, unwinding, learning, reprogramming, however you choose to look at that path. And so the voice, the inner voice, that intuitive voice, that self-hypnosis and meditation really helped me hone in on what that felt like, how my voice communicated to me. And it wasn't always the same. And that's what I had to learn. So when you're sitting and you're getting into that space and you're asking your inner voice to come forward, and you're asking that part of you to now step in and connect with you, know that some days it may not sound the same as it did. Like, it may not feel the same. You may hear it, you may see it, you may feel it, you may just be in a sense of knowingness, or you may get a vision or an imprint, or like a feeling about something. So your voice will communicate with you differently. And that's one thing I had to learn, because nobody taught me that. Nobody was like, hey, yeah, you know what? Every day it might not just be a glaring, yelling voice at you saying, hey, turn left. It may be a sense that you get. And so working at practicing, noticing, as you call the part of you that is your intuitive inner voice forward, what that sensation is like, and how that feels for you, how, that resonates with you. Because, yeah, you know what? We're going to have times when we think it's our intuitive inner voice and it's not. It's a fear voice, or it's a lack voice, or a scarcity voice that is interrupting that thought. So that's why sitting and really spending time, and I mean, for me, it was a daily basis. I had to do this daily for, took the course in September, October, November. It was kind of that November to January space time frame after taking the course and doing hypnosis every day, hours a day, that I started to figure out how my intuitive inner voice was really connected to this journey that I was about to embark on, that I was trying to understand what the next step was. And like I said, not every step got me where I wanted it to go, but it led me somewhere where I needed to go, so that, maybe I didn't get results, or maybe that was like, hey, that was really great, but that wasn't the impact that I was looking for. But it was able to clear the path a little bit too, because that happens. So as we start to communicate with our intuitive inner voice, as we begin to see what it's showing us, or feel what it's showing us, or hear what it's showing us, or know what it's showing us, or sense what it's trying to show us, we can make little changes. And my changes weren't drastic in the beginning. I thought like they felt minute to me, like, changing my diet and all that came through but when I changed my diet and I went on the vegetarian side of things back 2017, it was really quick, intuitive voice, like, hey, you know what? You need to go vegetable based for a little bit. This will help. And so if I hadn't spent the time sitting with my voice and really understanding how my intuitive inner voice connects and communicates with me on all different spaces, I would have missed that moment, because I could have easily overthought it, and I could have easily been like, yeah, you know what? I really like bacon. And, I didn't give up bacon right away, because I really did like it, but there was a motivation to give up more meat and to stay. And eventually, I was a vegetarian for a little while. And then at the same time, once upon a time, as time went on, I got the same inkling that now it was time to add a little bit of protein and different proteins and different animal proteins back into my diet a certain way. And I've kind of done that. And it's really, but it's so important. That's why, I didn't make every choice without, putting a lot of thought into it and sitting with it. So I didn't jump off the wagon right away. I sat with it. I did discuss with medical professionals that I trusted and who understand who I am and how I work. And, we went back and forth, and, everything that I was getting was definitely in alignment with. And so I didn't have any pushback that way. And I understand that can happen. But sitting with my voice in my meditations and asking it to show me something. So when we talk about how to communicate, how to awaken that part of you, how to start asking questions in meditation, what that's going to feel like in the beginning, what it could, feel like at the end, that will be unique to you. Everybody's a little bit different. That's why, again, it's super important to spend the time. So the first step is just being able to recognize that intuitive inner voice, being able to recognize how you recognize that intuitive inner voice. Journaling is a big thing. That is something that I have done, because journaling gave me an opportunity to go back and see the congruencies and the incongruencies in the conversations that I was having, and the connection and the guidance that was coming out of there. And I could really begin to pinpoint, okay, so every time I get a sensation, I get a feeling, I get a knowing, and then it becomes an image. So that was showing me how I was receiving that energy from my own intuitive self. So it kind of gave, I did it for 30 days, and it gave me just an opportunity to look back and just see what came on the paper. I didn't actually during that 30 days, I didn't actually read the paper. I didn't go back and look at the pages. I didn't look at what I wrote down. When I came out of meditation or self-hypnosis, or I was in there and I had a pen and paper sometimes, so auto writing, I would just write down what I noticed from an observation point of view. And that gave me a little more confidence that, okay, I'm seeing these patterns. I'm seeing how this conversation is building, is evolving, is clearing and awakening within me. And then once I saw that pattern down, I was okay with that. I was like, yeah, okay, I can get that. Now, then I started to ask questions. What is my next step? How can I move forward? And I kept the questions very simple and very kind of soft questions in a way, so that I could just sit. And again, I would just get into that place where, and it would hard, I call it no minds, where you're not thinking, you're just observing. And by the time I got to that point where I started asking myself questions, I had already done my 30 days. So I kind of knew when it was an intrusive thought, or a conscious thought, or, what if that intuitive inner voice was starting to come through. It was a lot softer. It was a lot quieter. My intuitive inner voice had a lot more, what's the right word? Compassion with confidence. It was a soft, compassionate, here's the information. There was no push to do anything with it. There was no judgment with the information. It just, boop, there it is. So starting with your who's, the whens, the wheres, the whys. The why can be a bit harder because we can be connected and attached to that answer. So I really like the what question. That was probably the question. What's my next step was my question. That was the exact wording for me, because that resonated with me. And asking it once in a meditation, and then setting up a program where in your next meditation, the intention before you get in is to receive guidance on the question that you asked. I don't know, it could be the day before, 2 days before, just I'm open to receive. And you go into a place of stillness, a place of quiet, a place of no minds. And just, again, notice what you notice, sense what you sense, observe what you observe, witness what you witness. And again, journaling or voice recording or some kind of option to take notes in your own way that works for you. Make a video, just, again, collect your data and notice how you're now beginning to start that conversation, and how asking questions, sometimes you get answers right away. Sometimes you'll get answers to a specific question 2 months, 3 months. When I was working on my kidney, helping to improve my kidney function, it was a 2-year process. including my eyes. And, it took months for some of the answers to come through. I would get to a point and I would plateau, and every intention would be like, what is my next step? And sometimes I would add, is it emotional? Is it a part? Is it past life? Like, I would start to hone in on those questions as I got more comfortable with listening and receiving. And then sometimes it would be a little moment in time where I'd all of a sudden hear it and it was like, oh, finally that question. Because I would write down all my questions that I had and I would start to cross them off as I would get the answers, and that would go on the journeys. And next, okay, I had my list, and I got to tell you, my list may have ended 7 times, but then it became a whole new list of stuff that was coming up. So it was a constant shedding of layers, and that is why I wanted to talk about today's topic, was listening, hearing, feeling, and allowing yourself just to kind of know that it's usually not the loudest thought that you hear that is your intuitive inner self communicating. It's usually the thought that you haven't thought about, the one that came just before you thought about it. So when you're in meditation or in self-hypnosis doing your trance work, just ask a yes and no question to begin. Is this my inner intuitive higher self? And see where, and I'm going to use the word judgment because it's easiest. The questioning happens versus the non-questioning. And when you start to non-question things and you start to feel that ease of things, then, that's when you start to explore, is this my, straight up asking, is this my intuitive higher self speaking to me? I mean, that's always something that, how would you like me to address you? And start to wait for those answers to come, or that feeling, or ask your intuitive guides to give you a physical sensation that represents them being present. So there are ways to incorporate that. So the conscious mind is at peace with the communication. And again, working and adding these little tools on a daily basis or on a semi-daily basis will help that communication become a little more clear, a little more abundant, a little more free-flowing, and that could give you the opportunity to start to, see where it wants to take you, see where your next step is. For some of it, it was, for me, emotions would come up. It would give me an emotion, one that I wasn't actually feeling before I started my inner work. And all of a sudden I have this emotion come up. And at first, I would be like, I would push it aside, like, no, that can't be it. Well, sometimes it is our emotion that is a part of the process that that our intuitive inner self that voice is trying to show us, our higher self is trying to express what that emotion is buried deep, deep, deep. And maybe it's emotion that we need to explore that is a part of a roadblock or a speed bump on the journey forward towards unlocking your potential, unlocking or creating a better version of yourself, or starting to shift the energy that you are hosting and supporting and making space for. Or, the law of attraction, we talk about this all the time, is that the law of cause and effect, the law of attraction is, bringing that energy back to you. What you put out, you get back. But that's from your internal landscape. So if that emotion is deep buried in there and you're working on creating, I'm just going to use this because it's easy, but more income flow or more cash flow or more concrete energy flow that is, going to help you get, work towards your goal, but you have a feeling of nervousness or anxiety with receiving that money and that energy that creates money, then that nervousness and that anxiety is maybe something that you would like to follow and journey with, so that's another way that your inner intuitive self will communicate with you. That might be setting up a bit of a block so that energy is only trickling in versus flowing in. So that's why it's so important to spend time to notice how you notice when you begin to ask your questions, starting with really simple questions. And and that's one of the biggest things when we talk about the law of attraction. We talk, being able to attract the energy that we emanate. Well, if we have an inkling of something that is incongruent with what we want to create, what we want to manifest, on the emotional side, then we also have to dive into that, because maybe we've dealt with the conscious parts of us that are like, oh, now I can't, the parts of us that maybe believe that we're unworthy of having, or whatever comes up for you. But there's also the emotional being, the emotional layer, that's like also a component that can either really inspire and motivate and be very powerful and abundant, or it can be in a space of holding us back or creating a speed bump or a bit of a wall that we have to overcome and work through. So yeah, and all of that is and how we communicate with our intuitive higher self. So those are some things. So I don't know, do you guys have any questions about how to connect with and how to hear your intuitive inner self, or how asking those questions are? I mean, I know when you first begin, your conscious mind is gonna step in, but eventually you will be able to be your own coach and follow the journey, still being the guy in the chair. Like you will be, it does get easier to kind of go, okay, I'm going to put on my coach hat for a minute. I'm going to ask this question and then go on the journey, because that's how I did a lot of the work myself. Was I taught myself how to be a coach, but also be the guy in the chair that is being guided on the journey. And some of that was, I totally forgot about this till now, but some of that was actually when looking at the meditation steps, the hypnosis steps that I use, it was actually using my inner voice, like to guide my own self into that space of home base, that space of my subconscious mind, so that I could ask a question and then I allowed myself to go on the journey. And that also really helped me get comfortable with asking questions and then going into a space of stillness to receive, to observe, to witness, to allow the path to open up and for the guidance to get me where I needed to go. And sometimes my, voice would be like, no, my inner intuitive self would be like, wrong question. All right. Well, I'm asking the wrong question. Awesome. So I'd have to go back to the drawing board and sit down and say, that's not the question. And sometimes I would use muscle testing too, to confirm with my question and to help me go, okay, now I've got this. Or if I was receiving guidance or an answer and I wanted to really, in the beginning, I would muscle test to help myself, or use my pendulum for, I guess reassurance, like, oh yeah, I am hearing myself today. When a lot of times I'd be like, no, you're thinking too hard. And I'm like, okay, well, that's enough. And then I would step back and I would clear that and go, okay, now I'm starting to understand how I work. And it's just really important to understand how you work as an individual, because that is going to be one of your biggest keys and your biggest, I don't want to say success, because success also like is so close to what we, sits so close with the idea of failure. But I truly believe that we don't really fail. We just find different avenues and we make different choices that give us a U-turn. And in that U-turn, we've learned so much. But it also clears out the next step. So we know not to walk down that same path. So we can be really, things that don't always work out for us sometimes give us the biggest opportunity to find the path that will work for us, or to try something new. And that's the thing, is if you guys get bored with this, change up your flow of how you do it. Like I do it when I walk sometimes. I do it when I work out. I do it, I try not to do it when I'm driving. I totally admit that, but sometimes that happens. I'm not going to lie. I get into that space, but I count myself out of it. But, if sitting and meditating isn't working, then try doing it. Go for a walk and just kind of ask your inner intuitive self to come forward and ask it a question, and then just walk and, be still with your breath, be in motion, and see how you sense that inner voice coming through that way as well. So there's different ways that you can do it. You don't have to lay down and just sit to do it. You can do it in different avenues of your life that allow you just to kind of to receive and to listen. So, and when you get comfortable with being on the two sides of things, it really does open up the conversation. And it really does create a different way of coaching yourself through these journeys, through your inner adventures. I mean, sometimes it was just for fun. Like, honestly, I just wanted to go and check out a past life that I had an idea about, or so sometimes it wasn't about always doing work. Sometimes it was just like, hey, let's go play. What do you want to show me, inner voice? What do I need to know? Or, you know what, let's just go and see what happens. So that is another way to kind of get familiar with that, is to not have a plan in the sense of, okay, I need to work on this, but just to invite your intuitive inner voice to help you in a different way that is for fun, or, you're just kind of entertainment value, where you want to see where it will take you and what it's going to show you. But that's just another way to learn and connect and communicate with yourself, and to get comfortable with that inner communication. And as that, again, that exploring happens, the confidence to ask questions, and the knowledge that you have the power to sit and be, or to allow, to trust and have faith that they're going to come through, will open up more and more. I need to connect with my pendulum. Well, when you have a pendulum, I always wear my hand down it, and then I place my hand under here. And when you connect with your pendulum, it's just about the presence of the energy of the pendulum, and just let yourself feel that energy, and notice what you notice. That can be a really easy way to connect with them. And it can be kind of fun that way, because because I don't know about you, when I was like younger, I'm like, oh, my arms got to be moving for sure, and I did get all this, like, try to be as still if possible. But I really noticed that for me, connecting with my pendulums was always about the presence of energy that I felt, and mine would go dormant when I wasn't in that space. So, and I always seem to feel that in my root chakra and my sacral chakra, and then it kind of comes up through my body. And but I always have to run my hands down, and that's one thing that, I was taught for clearing, but I don't know why, and maybe I'm totally off, but my method of connecting is actually the same. Because then I can just feel the energy through the pendulum and holding my hand underneath of it, and not asking any questions, but just holding it there and noticing, and just letting it do its thing and show me what it needs to show me. But then I would clear my mind, and stuff most of the time would happen. Sometimes I'd be like, all right, we're not talking today. And that's okay, because apparently, mine always go missing when they don't want to talk to me. You have to just weird. I know. So they don't want. Well, don't ask those questions then. Yes, no, sometimes that happens too, guys. You will ask a question, but maybe you really don't want to know the answer. And that's okay, because those answers won't, most of the time, in my experience, won't come forward unless you are actually, internally ready. Maybe consciously we think that we're not ready, but once you give permission, they will come forward, because that internal landscape's ready. So, but yeah, that's why I suggest highly craft your questions. And remember, when you're asking your subconscious questions, when you're asking your inner intuitive self questions, black and white questions, gray area doesn't work as well. So if you can keep your questions very black and white in the beginning, that will also help you to receive and to listen. And the subconscious mind doesn't really do negatives. So we have to remember that as we are asking our questions or forming our questions. I have a notepad where I always write out the questions, and rewrite them until I'm like, okay, there it is. And that's what I meditate on. So that's another trick, is when you first think of a question, write it down and sit with the wording. Because like I said, wording is very specific, because if you change just one word in that whole sentence, you're going to go on a totally different path as well. So writing it down and kind of getting it formulated, like, yeah, there it is. Like, you'll feel good about it. Like, that's my question. Boom, got it. You're like, yes, that's the wording. And then in that wording, think about it before you go in. And when you're in your subconscious mind, like you said, this is going to take practice. And for those of you who want to open your eyes, read the question and count yourself back down, that'll work too. That's another option until you get used to that question sitting and staying with you. What do you got? I have two. Neither of them work for me. Well, one question you may want to ask those pendulums is what needs to happen for them to connect with you. Like I said, some of mine stop talking. Some of mine are like, yeah, you're using us too much. Nuh-uh. Or, you know what? You got to clear your energy before. Some require saging or Palo Santo clearing before using them. So they can be very fickle. Asking. Oh, another thing I do with my pendulum, every once in a while, I'll write on a piece of paper, yes or no, and I'll just hold it there and let it like swing back to where it needs to be. I always find that it swings higher to the yes or no answer. And that might also help too when it comes to connecting with them. So yeah, just little things. But when you're, like I said, when you're crafting your questions, really make sure that you dial in that question and it's specifically on the journey that you want to take. Because like I said, one little shift in wording and you could go on a totally different path. And I learned that the hard, easy way, depending on how you want to look at it. When I was working on a couple things with my kidneys, I had a question written down, and in my head, I asked it differently, and I didn't follow my own process and system, my own protocol, and I went nowhere. I went absolutely nowhere. And then came out, looked at the question, realized I had shifted the sentence just a little bit, went back in and opened my eyes, looked at the sentence, and then asked it again as I closed my eyes down. And that took me exactly where I needed to go. What are we working on? Working on that. I have local place. Cool. Very cool. Yeah, no, I love pendulums. I don't know where mine are now, but like I said, mine kind of hide when I start to overuse them. But that's the same with my cards. My cards go dormant if I'm relying on them too much. So I was told that by a medium when I was 16 years old that I could use things and I can definitely use mediums, but if I relied on them too much for my own guidance, that they would go quiet to make sure that I paid attention to my intuitive inner voice and my connection. So they can be bossy, very, very bossy. So yeah. All right, guys, any more questions about how to connect and ask your inner self questions while in a trance, while in hypnosis, while in meditation? Remember, if the answer comes with judgment, that's most likely 9 times out of 10, and that is the conscious mind stepping in and feeding you an answer based. So it's that's the one thing. If there's emotion attached to it, it's usually the conscious space clicking into place into the conversation. So what else we got here? It comes up in me that I need to work on. So perfect timing. Beautiful. It's always perfect timing, guys. Like, that's the one thing. I don't always want to play by the perfect timing rule, but I've learned to respect the perfect timing rule, because as much as I've tried to overcome things before the timing is right, I always fall. It's like, oh, okay, this was a lot harder if I had just waited and sat with this and allowed myself to see what I needed to see without trying to force it. And that's the other thing. You're not going to force any conversations. The conversations that you're going to have with your intuitive higher self, inner self, they can't be forced. So as much as we would like them to be. And like I said, sometimes you'll ask a question that you won't receive the answer till later on, because usually that means that something else needs to shift or needs to be shed that is blocking you from being able to fully experience and fully unwind that question. So that's the other thing is, if you're not getting an answer, another question that you can ask yourself is, what is in the way of me receiving this information? And you may actually get a whole new whack of information that is a journey that you need to go on, or something that is holding you back, or something that is kind of compressed on top of it, because you got to think about everything in layers. Another layer that you're going to peel back that is going to open the door for that question to be answered more easily, more fluidly, more optimally, and will help you move through it even faster. Because that is another thing, with some of the sessions, I've had clients go back to the same past life. I've had a lot of clients actually go back to the same past life, but when they go back the second, third, or fourth time, they're looking at it from a different lens, because what the layers that they shed the first, second, third, and fourth or fifth time was very different. How they see and how they interacted with that life was very, very from the perspective of the layer before. And then, getting to the core or the last piece of that puzzle, they had to go through those different steps so that when they went back and re-examined the life, they could see it from overall perspective. And there was something there for them. But then until they did that layer work, they found themselves, going back to that connection. It wasn't, and it's funny because the questions that we asked actually were all very different. The parts that we were following, the emotions that we were regressing through, were all very different, and not even in the same category of what you would think about frequency connection, but they all led us back because that one life was really overloaded with things that had been imprinted and impacted upon during that experience. So that's the other thing, is your questions may be very different, but they may take you to the same place because you've released one layer of that onion, and now you can see the next layer and you can move into the next layer. So that, it's another way when you're talking and connecting with your intuitive voice, inner self, that even though you may think you're on a totally different topic, it may be a topic that is going to take you to the same place. And so looking at that same place and just stepping back and noticing what it is that you sense, what you notice, what you feel, what information is coming forward to you, and how you sit with that, how you hold that information, how that information holds you, and going through your releasing, shedding, understanding process. So that's the other thing. So your questions may change all the time, and you may think the topic's very different, but it may take you back to the same place. And don't let that discourage you or discourage the fact that you're connecting to that intuitive inner voice in your inner self. Because like I said, things can have multiple layers that are intricately puzzled together, but we only get one little puzzle piece at a time. And what I've been told from my own guides and higher self is that's just so we don't get overloaded with the journeys, and that we can process and still stay in flow and go forward. So yeah, so that's tonight's show. That's what I had for everybody. I'm thinking that we'll continue to do these Thursday debriefs after Monday meditations, and kind of just talking about the meditations. And if you guys have questions about them from Monday nights, that I can get them answered, or if questions arise, you're like, hey, you know what? I noticed this. Then this would be a great way to do that. So I want to thank you guys for everybody being here. You guys are amazing, and I'm very blessed to share the time and space and energy with you. And I thank you. If you guys like this show and you want to, keep going forward with this, please smash the like button, leave me a comment, and we will. And like I said, if you have questions or and you didn't want to ask them openly, please send me a message on Instagram or here, or my email, snowjanelle@gmail, and you can I can answer them privately that way, or send me a PM on Facebook or Instagram, and we'll go from there. I love TikTok, but I don't know how. Sometimes I can find the messages, sometimes I can't. So it's better for Facebook or Instagram to send me that message. All right, guys. So thank you for spending your time. I hope that you have a wonderful evening. Next Monday, I will guys let you know about Meditation Monday next week, just because I'm on the coast and my schedule gets really, really hectic. So it might be later than normal. I just gotta figure out my timing on my day, and I'm hoping I can do it. But if not, then I will see you the following week. But I will put a message on Telegram to letting everybody know that we are good to go, or if we're going to postpone to the following week. So have a great week, guys, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you for being here. And